Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York on a day full of developments for Democrats in Washington, D.C. after the president went to Capitol Hill with a framework for much of his domestic agenda, a sweeping bill addressing social programs and the climate crisis. That's what's happening today on the left in American politics, in the Democratic Party. On the right, it is a very different story. The right, which has, at this point, abandoned all pretense of even pretending to try to govern this country. There are signs of an unflinching commitment to disinformation. On Wednesday, the disgraced and deplatformed ex-president, who still leads the Republican Party, found yet another way to spread his election fraud conspiracies, this time in the form of a letter to the editor in the Wall Street Journal. We are not going to read it for you. It's chock full of lies that have been debunked over and over and over again by multiple media outlets, notably today, including the Wall Street Journal. But the Washington Post describes it like this. The nearly 600-word letter is replete with loosely sourced and largely debunked claims of fraud in Pennsylvania, a state that President Biden won by 81,660 votes, handing him 20 electoral college votes that helped secure his victory. The former president's screed about election fraud in Pennsylvania was published 358 days after the 2020 election. And for nearly every single one of those 358 days, Donald Trump and his Republican allies have sown the seeds of distrust in our country's elections. Now, a year later, a year after the election, the big lie is making itself felt in the Virginia governor's race. The Washington Post is reporting on a sharp spike in the number of Republican poll watchers inspired by baseless and unfounded fears of voter fraud. Quote, across Virginia, the GOP election integrity push has largely driven the influx of election observers in this year's gubernatorial race. It's according to local, state, and national Republican officials. In some trainings, prospective poll watchers have been taught to see themselves as a bulwark against election fraud, and some groups have been corralling their own poll watcher armies. But while multiple registrars said they welcome the poll watchers' commitment to transparency, some tactics have made election officials uneasy because it's clear former President Donald Trump's claims of mass voter fraud have driven a lot of the interest. Of course, the big lie isn't just playing out in our elections or in Virginia's elections. We've also seen how it leads to and incites deadly violence. More than 10 months after the deadly January 6th insurrection inspired by Donald Trump and his lies about the election, a right-wing disinformation campaign is still at it in trying to whitewash exactly what happened that day. It's set to get a major boost in the form of a documentary of sorts by one Tucker Carlson. The so-called documentary appears to support the baseless conspiracy theory that the January 6th attack was a false flag. We're going to play you a really short snippet, only because we want you to see what kind of disinformation Fox News is in the business of peddling.
The domestic war on terror is here, is coming after half of the country.
False flags have happened in this country. One of which may have been January 6th.
We at Deadline White House reached out to Fox News to ask them if there's any evidence to support their claims, any of them, in the snippet, in the doc. We haven't heard back from them yet. We'll update you if we do. The Fox News special prompted this response, though, from Liz Cheney. Quote, it appears that Fox News is giving Tucker Carlson a platform to spread the same type of lies that provoke violence on January 6th. As Fox News knows, the election wasn't stolen, and January 6th was not a false flag operation. Right-wing disinformation as a threat to democracy is where we start this hour.